forest and formed what they called covens. They didn't call it Wicca, but they called it various names, and Lady Ray is well able to tell you what those names are. And they later came also to call themselves Wicca. And they were really the earliest of the people who we can gather and think of as starters of this whole thing. In 1936, by the best count we can get, there were about 100 covens operating in the United Kingdom, of which 3 or 4 were operating in the New Forest. Sybil Leake's mother, Louisa, ran one, and there were various people doing it. They didn't see any need at that time to get any kind of federal or state recognition. When we came to the United States, we found that there were a lot of people who were doing things in the name of Wicca which were very negative. A case in point was where some students took their counselor out and sacrificed him in the thought that that would give them power. That we felt that something had to be done to clear the name and to say this is what it really is, as opposed to all this weird bullshit that was going on. So,
it's a technical term, we can break it down if you don't understand.
Adorable.
yeah,
I can show you sign language what that means.
I have a tendency to use technical terms like that. Lady Ray does too, so don't just blame me for it.
Me too.
Lady Ray represents a more traditional path than we do, and she will tell you that you need to do things right. We will tell you that you need to do things almost right, and not worry about it so much. However, what the heck? We've known one another for many, many years, and we both appreciate each other's path. You can be any path you like, and we want you to remember one thing, and it harm none, do what you will. And part of that harm is if you denigrate somebody else's path. If you say you're full of bull, then that's denigrating their path and you're harming them. And you shouldn't do that. And so to us, the people who do that are not in any way, shape or form Wiccans, okay? In order to get more people involved, we decided to start teaching the path that I had learned in Cornwall as a student in the 1950s. And we found that we could not reach enough people by teaching at home. Mainly because I was the Director of International Operations for Emerson Electric in St. Louis, and I was traveling a lot. I visited every country of the world except Russia, and I could not go to Berlin because of security problems, but I visited everywhere else. And one of the things I learned very quickly was that people are people no matter where they are.
Yeah.
If you're talking to people in darkest Africa, they still have the same concerns we do about love and life and where the next hamburger's coming from, etc., etc. And it teaches you very quickly that people are people. And if you're kind and nice to them, they will be kind and nice to you in general. There will be a few dumbasses who don't know the technical term, who won't respond that way. But mostly, they're okay. Even when we tell Christians nowadays that we're Wiccans, they don't really respond too badly. Most of them are beginning to say, well, what's that about, sort of thing. way to the Supreme Court, the 5th District, they got us federal recognition. And it is well to remember when we're dealing with prisoners, and a lot of inmates are looking for help. We get dozens of letters every week from inmates who are searching. And it's one of the outstanding problems in the community as to how to deal with those people. But they got us federal recognition. And the federal recognition was based on a much maligned book called The Witch's Bible. And it is, again, well remember that that's the book that got us federal recognition. What else? You want to know what's in it, perhaps, and why we find it a good path for us through life. Notice I said for us. One of the things that is important to us is the business of reincarnation and what it means in your life. And I'm going to pass it over to Yvonne to talk about that for a minute.
This is my favorite
I'm
subject.
going to let her talk later.
Yeah. Here we go. Reincarnation as a progressive path of learning and growth is my experience, my take, that has healed my life. For what that's worth, it may heal yours if you embrace it and espouse it and incorporate it into your daily behaviors. Picture something in the sky. I put this at the center of this galaxy where we inhabit. The center of the galaxy is still impenetrable even to the best astronomic instruments. It's a body of fire in the astronomic sense, where the cameras and the telescopes cannot penetrate. And I picture that as throwing off sparks continually. Sparks of fire, sparks of life, that come to various planets, various places, and inhabit something like a one-cell body that may be a piece of rock. Our friends in the First Nations talk of the living. And this little body of awareness thrown from the Great One, the Great Source, learns all it can about being that identity. And when it has learned all it can from that identity, it lays down the entity's physical side and goes back to the other side of life to work with its guide at the appropriate level of awareness to figure out and make sense of what it has just learned. It has an incarnation in that sense. It comes back again to this side of the invisible veil and inhabits another body, a little more complicated, through which it can learn more. It's like semesters at school. They learn something and they release from that physical body and go back to the other side of the veil to work with their guides and incorporate what they've learned, what they've experienced, into a meaningful pattern. This happens incarnation after incarnation after incarnation, as many as the little spirit needs to learn to fill in the blanks, to understand what it is doing and what it is being.
So the point here is that the spirit is growing on every incarnation, and so one of the things within Wicca where you ask a Christian, why are you here? They'll say, well, it's to glorify God. We say it's to learn, it's to grow, it's to reach forward and to reach higher, to allow yourself to learn everything you can. People think divorce is a terrible thing.
No.
But through divorce, you get to meet another companion, you get to meet more. If you could just relax and get out of the straitjacket of sexual singularity that the Christians preach, you would find you don't have to get a divorce. You can meet other people and have a good interchange with them and learn from them and grow, reach towards your own epiphany and reach towards your own increased awareness.
Yes.
Go back, Yvonne, let Ray have a go at this.
Okay. When my daughter was about a year, maybe a year and a half, she had vocabulary, but she was still toddling. We're in the kitchen, I'm doing dishes, and she's playing around, and she looks at me and she says, "Mommy, do you remember when we were sisters?" And then she got this confused look on her face, and I said, "Tell me about it." And she just shut down. But that was, she was remembering a past life that we had had together. And that was an affirmation for me. That was before I had ever heard of Wicca. But it was like, I had heard or been exposed to reincarnation. And when she said that, that was just like, oh, okay, it's real. And then I really started looking at reincarnation closer. And as I found my way into Wicca, then it was past life regressions and stuff like that, where I've been able to learn and touch into relationships that are happening now that are playing out the issues that we had back then.
Yes.
My first husband and I, we were together way back in Babylon. And he put me out of the city walls where I was expected to starve. And I eventually did. But first I gleaned, and then I begged, and then I prostituted, and then I died. You know, and it took a 2-year period. Well, when my first husband and I divorced, on the phone he said, "You'll be dead in 2 years." And I went, "Oh, okay."
Here we go again.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's just stuff like that that tell you it's real. And it's important that we pay attention to the signs, the messages that we get from those experiences. And as we experience them, that we tie them back to what happened before that is causing this.
We tend to believe that you reincarnate in a progression through the higher animals, and you eventually become a male in the human level. And then after that, you become a female. And that really gets me in a lot of trouble with the guys. But ladies can have more experiences than guys. Let's face it, they can have a child and raise a child. And the whole business of childbirth and the love involved in having a child and raising it is just an experience that men can approach but not really be part of to the same extent that the female can. And we believe that that crossing over point from the male incarnation to the female incarnation may be the cause of a lot of the gay problems that we see, where people have become female before they should. Or Yvonne will tell you about surgeons.
What surgeons?
The knock on the door. Is it a boy or a girl?
Oh, yes.
Gee,
Yes, yeah.
lost her there.
Well, I'm fascinated by that. Sometimes when a human baby is born, it isn't quite right yet. And there's a dad at the door, pounding on the delivery room door, "Doctor, is it a burglar or a boy? Is it a burglar or a boy? I have to know right now." Well, the baby isn't quite finished, and so the doctor says, "Well, hell, there's one touch of the scalpel, and he decides the baby's ostensible gender. Doctors are human beings too, and they're not always making the right guess. So a kid is born and grows up with an inaccurate label. And they wonder, how did this happen? And there was in last November's Rolling Stone magazine, I think it was, there was a story of a little labeled boy who insisted he was a girl.
Yes.
And by God, he was.
Yeah.
He was. But he'd just been guessed wrong in the delivery room, so they had to backtrack and update and correct all the records. But the kid was in constant misery until the correct label was fastened on the kid.
Yeah.
And, get this, whatever you make fun of this time, that's what you're going to come back as.
Uh-oh.
Yvonne is
As
going to
a-
come back as a Republican politician.
Somebody in the Billy Graham
Cancel, cancel.
a fundamentalist. Oh, what a sentence. What a
Yeah, fundamentalist Republican.
Yeah, yeah. With
A
a-
female.
Baptist.
Female.
Baptist preacher. There you go.
I've done Baptist. I've done Baptist this time. I'm putting it with my feet.
I'd like to confuse them.
Yeah.
Okay. My take on reincarnation is, yes, we do start off as maybe amoeba and come up through the animal kingdom and then come into human form. But I believe that we are sometimes a male and sometimes a female, and we might be female in 2 or 3 consecutive lives, and then we might be male in 1 or 2 lives, and that way. And I think that the confusion does happen at that time of birth when the fetus or the soul is making the decision whether they're going to be male or female and have difficulty, and they're still in spirit form. They haven't entered the body yet. They're still in spirit form, but they can't decide, do I want to be a boy or do I want to be a girl? Well, a girl does this and a boy does that, and they're going back and forth, and finally it's time they have to be in the body if that fetus is going to live. That soul has to connect, and they do it when they haven't made the decision. So that's my input on being gay. And you come back and forth because you have man lessons to learn and you have woman lessons to learn. And if you come back as a man who has been abusive to women, the next time you might be the woman that gets to be abused. So you get to learn all the lessons.
Sure, why not?
Over time.
There's
And
no
a
set limit.
millennium.
Yeah, yeah. It takes as long as it takes, and there's no set number of reincarnations, no matter what the Rosicrucians or the Madame Blavatsky people, theosophists say. There's not 77,777 incarnations. You have as many as you need to get to fill out your complete resume and understand what you need to understand. Now, when you have done all that and learned all the lessons possible at the human level, we have been given that often 3 souls will unite as one. And glimpses of this fact have led to a lot of triple,
Gods and
threefold
goddesses.
gods and goddesses. And they're just glimpses of what lies ahead. If you're not going to become a part of a threesome, you may come back as a porpoise or a dolphin or a cetacean of some kind, because they are kinder to their fellows than we are kind to our fellows. There is no place on this planet that I know of where you can escape the thought of war and conflict and slashing and burning and killing and inflicting misery. Well, we have the 3 Abrahamic religions, the major paths to
don't do that. Pick up some book and say, well, that's a good idea. I wonder if I can investigate that. I wonder what I can find out about.
And build on it. Build on it. We're not finished. We don't yet know it all. And some of us who are exploring possibilities, whether we like it or not, have the responsibility of retrieving knowledge as much as we're able to handle and to go forward with it, to make it known. Now, the cetaceans or the threefold beings are glimpsed. There are higher levels. The archetypes and the lower deities or those forms are glimpses of higher levels. And eventually, I postulate, eventually we will finally know enough that we can lay aside all our self-centered identity. We can lay that aside and rejoin the being at the center of the galaxy and start again.
We think of the whole thing as a growth system. You get a spark from the deity that comes down, it grows, 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 and eventually it returns to the deity which is now made larger. And the reason that happens is because the universe is expanding. Because we need all of those extra spirits to make up the whole of the energy in the universe. We talk a lot about black holes, and we talk about clouds and things like that, but there's a whole bunch of energy in the universe that doesn't add up. And people at Oxford back in the 30s decided that the reason it doesn't add up is we haven't included spiritual energy in the equation. But if we include spiritual energy, it does add up. I think we're ready for questions.
Is there anybody you haven't offended yet? Raise your hand.
Unless you have something else.
Here.
Well, in terms of what you were saying, do you do hypnosis and past life regressions?
We do.
Okay.
I don't personally, but our group
But-
does. And that's what I wanted to, that was going to be my first question was, we talked a little bit about the internal journey and the external journey. So the knowledge that we acquire, the things that spark our interest in a particular subject is clearly something that we need to look at. We need to look at those things. But do you feel that the internal journey is more valid even than the information that we're getting from a book?
Yes.
Yes.
And the
That's a
connectedness,
simple answer.
the
Sorry.
and to the cosmic
think they're
consciousness,
equal.
our collective mind.
Yes.
Yes.
I feel that they might both be equal, not one more or the other, but combined, they are very important to the individual's personal growth, as well as bringing that forward to share with other people. Just like my story of my daughter, that it struck some chords out there.
Sure. So when we're talking about a natural knowledge and natural wisdom that comes from the collective mind, from source, are you finding more and more natural witches, people that are just naturally gifted in areas that some of us have trained for a long time to master, and just knowledgeable about ritual, knowledgeable about the universe in ways?
Well, usually,
Sorry.
usually they're more knowledgeable in a particular way. Like Grandma taught me how to use herbs, and I don't only use herbs, but I've done this and this and this with the herbs. That type of thing, whether it's herbs or metaphysical, transcendent stuff.
I think what's happening is, though, that people are now more willing to talk about
That's true.
what they're learning.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. I mean, they've been so subdued and so beaten down and told, forget it, that's bullshit, another technical term, that we're so pleased that people are beginning to come out and talk. And I think reading the book, they see something and they think, no, I don't really think that's necessarily true.
Yeah.
And they explore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the more exploration and the more, because the writers are just as stupid as we are, we're writers.
Well, the thing that I wanted to bring out is share with each other and do your past life regressions and find those little pieces of information. What my experience has been is when I go into a past life situation, I live a scenario, but then when I come back into this physical body and this physical earth, somehow or other, it relates.
Yes.
It's,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
Yes.
Always.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay,
Very big transition.
you have something to learn from that experience.
And how do you feel that compares to, say, genetic memory, once that's unlocked? Past life regression and genetic memory, say, great-great-grandma's information that you're receiving through
Well,
some awareness that otherwise you would not have.
I wouldn't separate them.
Okay.
One of the things is that,
It's how you have it.
yeah, people, so many people come back as a group. People, we have a very fluid population in the United States. It's slightly different in Europe. You find, for instance, that the people who live around Bristol in England, a whole bunch of them died at Montségur in France during the repression of the Catars. And so they tend to come back as a group. And so even here in the United States, we have found various small groupings of people in towns you wouldn't expect, Springfield, Missouri, for God's sake.
Middle of the Bible Belt.
They come back together, and they have very similar memories, and you might call that a genetic memory, I don't know.
Yeah, there's a bunch in Arizona that are all from Egypt. They find each other again and go lurch forward into another chapter.
Another desert.
But it's
Another desert, absolutely.
it's so rewarding that people are beginning to talk and come out.
Venture, maybe feeling safe to venture out and say, I had an idea. What do you think? Is that everything like you had? And they meet each other, we meet each other. And are strengthened by our knowledge of each other, by our acquaintance. We are strengthened and reinforced. So be kind to each other and pool your thoughts and reinforce each other. Please, please. And just when you're in the work situation or whatever, just drop a word or two, a little phrase, and somebody's ears will prick up. And you'll find another one of your sort. And be strengthened through
And
that.
please don't put people down,
Right.
Please do everything you can to avoid that.
I would like to tell a story. It's so funny because when I came here, I had no idea we were talking about past life regressions. What was the first thing that I talked to you about? The only past life regression that I remember. Okay, so I'm going through a meditation, and I had just spoken to Jeremy, and Jeremy had told me one of his past life regressions and how he was one of the leaders who blew up Atlantis, and I was a year, maybe 2 years later, I was in meditation, and as we're going through the meditation, I go down into the ocean, up through this this walkway. I could see the ocean around me. It was almost like going through one of those aquarium things. And I open at the latch door, and I realize those sons of bitches, they're getting ready to blow up Atlantis. And his face comes to mind, and there he was, standing there going, oh! Like, oh, yeah, anyway, next thing I know it, I'm transferring myself over to Egypt, and I become one of the mystery school teachers to Jesus Christ. And that's what I remember.
Wow.
Anything else is like, that's it. But yeah, soul groups, we find each other. And I was so mad at him for blowing it up, and now he's my best friend. So you have to come back, and you have to, eventually, you're going to have to love the person that you wind up hating. It'll come back sooner or later.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Your paths will cross again
Yeah.
until you sort yourselves out.
Yeah.
That's got to be a loaded phrase.
Huh?
I just had a comment to something that you
Right.
raised there. You'd mentioned that we repeat scenarios, and when I work with my clients as far as past life regressions go, I found that they repeat almost the same identical story, not even the feelings or the scenario. I had one lady that in the 1600s, she was in an interracial relationship, but her family pulled it apart, obviously, for the time. In the 1800s, the same thing. She was from part of an aristocratic family in London, pulled it apart. And in this relationship, she's in an interracial relationship, and her family's Southern Baptist, and she's the rich white girl, and he's the African American poor family. And she's married to him now, and she came to me and sat down and said, "Well, you're going to have to stand up to your family, aren't you?" And I said, "It's taking you, 2 lifetimes with the same man, and now you're the third one. When are you going to get it?" And that happens consistently over and over and over again. And I find it actually fascinating. I guess we call it karma, but it's
Gotta work it out.
it's very similar to post-traumatic stress when we go have emotional traumas and we repeat patterns over and over and over again.
And I want to say something else. If you do suicide,
Oh dear.
that's like playing hooky from school. You can do it, but you'll have to do it. You have to repeat semesters until you complete your assignment.
And who wants to go through the diaper phrase again?
Who wants to be a rock again?
I'd be okay with that. I do a lot of meditating.
Question. I don't know if anyone else has had an experience like this, but in my lifetime, I have met people who have the same name, and I've met multiple people who have that particular name. And only one of those people seemed to have any significance in our relationship with each other. And I'm not talking about simple names like Tom Page or John Smith. I'm talking about names like Elias Drazen. Strange names where you would not normally find 2 people in your lifetime with a similar name that are completely unrelated to each other, not in the same family lineage. Is that an experience that you have had or could expound on?
We keep computer track of students, right? And every so often we go in and ask the machine